Solo board gaming night here, and today I'm going to be reviewing The Loop, Dr. Foe Strikes Back by Pandasaurus Games. I really do have a lot to say about this game, but before I talk about that, let's head over to the box and talk about the components and what's included inside. I want to take a moment and talk about the box itself. Unfortunately, the box does not contain an insert, so as you could see here, everything's just, you gotta figure a way to put everything in there. I personally make my own inserts, so it won't bother me overall, but I just don't like it, and I think it's a missed opportunity when companies do not include an insert that's actually useful to help you organize and store your game. And it's a shame because if you take a look at the box itself, they clearly took some time and they dedicated nice art to it and everything. It's well made inside. It's just such a shame that such a beautiful looking box was hampered by not including an insert. I would also like to mention that the cardstock used for the cards are not the best. Now, they're not bad, and they'll do its job. They feel okay, but I just feel since this is a deck building game that does require a lot of shuffling, I would probably recommend that if you're going to play this game, maybe sleeve them just in case, just so that they don't get damaged. Once again, it's not terrible quality, but the shuffling may create some wear and tear down the line. With that said, the player reference mission cards and character cards are really sturdy. They're thick cardboard and they're built to last. Also, the tiles that you place in the game are also very high quality and built to last. I enjoyed them. The bag, I believe, is strong enough to be able to withstand constant drawing and shuffling of tokens. And since I'm on the topic of tokens, the tokens do its job. They're very good cardstock, and the cubes, nothing bad to say there. I enjoyed the meeples. What I like most about the meeples is depending who you choose is the type of meeple that you're going to have, color and shape. It's kind of neat. Here are the other tokens, not much to talk about. They're good quality here. The 3D machine, let's not talk about Dr. Foe's 3D machine. This is impressive. I enjoy this. This is probably my favorite part of the whole entire box. It's kind of really cool. The playing boards, the game boards, they're good quality as well. Not the sturdiest, not the strongest, not the thickest, also not the flimsiest I've ever seen either. The only negative that I will say is the actual board, the circular board that goes in the middle of the table. Because there was no insert in the loop, it did get banged up a little bit, and that's a shame because other than that, the component quality inside the box, everything in it, I enjoyed it. I liked it. It's good. The art of the loop is also very eye-catching to me. It has an 80s vibe and feel to it. It's very colorful. It looks like something I would watch on TV when I was a kid growing up. Everything's just so flashy. Just even the the villain Dr. Foe, the way he's illustrated, it looks great. I love the art. The art on the cards, it has that 80s feel to it. They're funny. All the items are funny. Like most items will get a chuckle out of you at least if you were born in the 80s maybe. I don't know. I think the art in the loop is really well done and definitely adds to the entertainment value of the game overall. Within the rulebook and operational booklet of the loop, you'll find a lot of pop culture references from the 80s and beyond. Everything from Back to the Future to Terminator, Mr. T, and even The Office has a reference with its assistant to the regional manager joke. There's some good stuff in here for those that are interested in lore. To play the true solo mode, what you have to do is choose either 2, 3, or 4 agents and place them in front of you. From there, you're going to place each agent's meeples wherever they belong. In this case, Robot Finisher goes in the Age of Robots. Make sure you have the full battery side face up. Then grab each of their 6 starting cards, shuffle them, and place them in front of you, forming one single deck, which you'll be drawing from later on. To determine who the active agent is, you choose a card. On the bottom left of the card, it'll let you know which agent it belongs to. In this case, it belongs to Z. So I'll go like that. I'll draw another card. Once again, it belongs to Z, so I'll place it on his side. I draw another one, and this one goes to Mr. Time. Now, you keep doing that, and the first player that gets 3 cards in front of them will be considered the active player. The cards under the active agent are considered to be in your hand. If you ever had to draw a card from the top of your deck, it didn't matter which character that card belonged to. It would go under your active agent. If you gained an artifact from the game, you would place that gained artifact card on top of the deck. If you played an ability which allowed you to use another player's artifact card, if that player does not have an artifact card under their character card, you can't use anything. In this case, for Mr. Time, you'd be able to use his artifact, but Robot Finisher does not have an artifact to use. During the refresh phase, you're only going to be discarding your active agent's cards. Every card in the other agents are going to be left alone. Also, we're going to skip the part where we draw new artifacts, and we're actually going to do that when it's time to select an active agent the way I showed you, by drawing a card from the deck and keep adding them until the next agent has 3 cards. Then you'll find out who the active agent is. With that out of the way, let's go ahead and continue on with our review. I was able to play this game about 5 times. The reason I say about 5 times is because the first game I played, I consider it a practice run. Let me go ahead and show you what happened that game. After my very first turn, these 2 eras were destroyed. 2 turns after that, the era over here was destroyed. And the turn right after that one, this era got destroyed. I'm filming this while it happened real time, just to let you know that I feel like I didn't even get to play. I lost the game before I even barely did anything. I'm not gonna lie, that was a rather bad first impression that I had, and my heart kind of sunk, only because I've heard about this game for almost a year now, and I've been so excited to play it because I've heard so many positive things about it. And it is a good game. I just want to explain the way I felt and the reasons why I felt this way, because this game has a lot of good, but it also has a lot of things that you need to be very aware of before you jump in, just to make sure you know what you're getting yourself into. I ended up playing this game twice in true solo mode, and 3 times as if 3 players were playing cooperatively. I'm going to go ahead and give you an overhead view of what the table looks like so you get an idea of how much space the game takes up. I'll be honest, it takes up quite a lot of space. Not the most I've seen, but it's up there. So you're going to need a lot of room to make this game work. I mean, I'm pretty sure, like I always mention, you could probably fit it in less room, but to be able to see and understand everything that's going on, you need some space. And I'm going to go ahead and give you the good news first. There is absolutely no difference how the game is played, whether you're playing it true solo or cooperatively. The biggest change is that change that I showed you in the setup of true solo. That's it. The game pretty much plays very similar to multiplayer. The biggest difference is, and I'm going to go ahead and show you the characters. When you're playing as a cooperative game, you're able to know who's going to come next and which special abilities they're going to have. And that's actually a good thing because it helps you be able to plan ahead. The difference between that and the true solo is that the true solo mode almost feels kind of random because the same character can go more than once. So like if you're like, oh, all right, next move, I want I want this character to be able to do this because I know that character's next. Well, in true solo mode, you could have, for example, the Time Prowler go 2 times in a row. And you'll be like, oh, if only I would have been able to have her go next, things would have gone a lot better. But sometimes that just doesn't happen. So that's the only thing about true solo is there's a randomness to who is going to come next, whose turn it will be next to play. And this is going to be the biggest negative I'm going to have to say about the game. The randomness in this game is absolutely killer. It's insane. That 3D machine in the middle is not your friend. It's not your friend at all. The bag of clones that gets scattered around the board, if that gets out of hand and you get cards that do not give you the ability to deal with those clones in your turn, you're looking at a world of hurt that is absolutely unavoidable. And it's going to hit you and hit you hard. And it could turn the best laid plans into your worst nightmare. The worst part about that is, though, sometimes you feel like you don't have any sort of way to avoid it. It feels unavoidable. And that's just, it's troubling to me. I don't like that you sometimes just watch things play out on the board and just sit there and say, well, there's nothing I could do, and things are just getting destroyed. One after the other, until the game's over. And that really stinks. I don't mind losing. I really don't. I'll be fine losing most of the time. However, I'm not losing here because I am making a poor choice. It was on me. I should have done one thing, but I did the other. And because of that, the game was thrown. No, this is losing when it's not in my control. And I don't mind a little bit of randomness, a little bit of swinginess. But this, I believe, felt like it took it to the next level. I felt this game was very swingy. So if you had a lot of clones all over the board, or your turn just happened to not give you anything to be able to deal with those clones, and the next era, like I'll show you what happened to me, this era, when you pull out a card like this, that means that Dr. Foe is going to bring his attention to that era of the board, and he's going to roll to place 2 of these cubes into this middle machine right here. But for every additional clone that is on the board, which there's 3 more here, there's 3 additional cubes that you're going to throw in there. And there's nothing you could do about it. I had this section right here completely full, and I just couldn't do anything to stop it. I just couldn't do anything to stop it at all whatsoever. I tried for 2 turns before this to try to tame that area over here and clear it out from the clones, but I just couldn't do it. And it wasn't because I didn't have the ability to do it skill-wise. It was because the cards that I played for 2 turns in a row stopped my ability to be able to do so. And that's really a shame. It's a true shame because there are a lot of positives with this game. Let me guide you through what a turn looks like. There's going to be 5 different phases you do. In the first phase, you're going to end up adding clones to the board. The way you do that, if you look off to the right here, there's this HQ board. And this determines which era Dr. Foe is on. Above that era, you'll see a few icons. Those icons determine how many clones you're going to place on the board, and then an artifact, you'll flip it over, look at the bottom left, they'll tell you which era it belongs to. Go back to the board, find the era with that symbol, and place it beneath the board. Right here, there's no there's no mission here because I completed it. And you'll place it there in the board. The next thing that happens is going back to the HQ board. Dr. Foe, you'll draw one card, okay, and he will move an era. So in this case, he'll go to, I believe this is the industrial era, okay? So going back to the board, you're going to go ahead and turn his machine until the middle ramp is flush with the era that the card showed, which in this case was the industrial era. This is where I had the biggest amount of randomness that happens to the game, but in the meantime, I'm just going to keep showing. So like, let's say there's two clones on that space. You're going to grab 2 cubes, and for each additional clone that's there, you're going to add another red cube. So in this case, you'll have the 2 cubes plus 2 more, 1 for each of those clones. You will then feed these cubes to the top of this little contraption, and wherever those cubes fall, you'll go ahead and place them on these empty spaces right here. And you just keep going around and doing that. These are the extra ones that were there, but this one fell here. You just keep doing that, and if you were ever to, in this case, if another one would have fallen out of here and a 4th one would have needed to be placed, but there's not a 4th space, this era is destroyed. And what you do when it gets destroyed, you'll remove whatever mission board is, and if you had an active mission, any cubes placed here would be discarded. You would discard all of the cubes, and if you had a card here from your artifact, let's say this artifact would, oh look, it turned out to be the same era. If any artifact that was part of that era gets destroyed and then placed in the destroyed pile of HQ. After that, you're going to try to avoid that from happening. In this case, you would have to add another vortex tile right here. You don't want to have more than 4. If you have to place a fourth vortex tile on the board, you lose. If for whatever reason, which is what happened to me, you have to place another vortex tile on the same space that a vortex tile already exists, you lose. Also, if Dr. Foe's cards, every time they run out, you shuffle them, create a new deck, and place it on the next space here. This is the final space right here. If this deck runs out and you have not completed everything you have to do on the board, completed 4 missions, because you have to complete in this mode, because there's several modes, you have to complete 4 missions. And each mission, I'm not going to get into it, they're very self-explanatory, you'll be able to figure it out yourself. Each mission, once you complete it, you just put it off to the side as completed. You choose, each player chooses 2 cards from the artifact deck. They choose 1 to keep and 1 to destroy. And everybody goes ahead and takes a turn to do that. However, that's what happens when you complete a mission. I'll show you how to complete a mission after I keep telling you how the turn works. I'm almost done here. So once Dr. Foe does that, if something era breaks or a vortex goes into an era, that's what you have to do. Avoid that from happening a 4th time. The next step is going to be your actual action phase. That's when you're going to look at the cards on whichever agent is up next. You're always going to have 3 cards that you're going to be dealing with. You're going to have an ability that's a free action ability for you at all times. And right here, this means that your battery is full. What happens is when you flip this over, you get to, as a free action, move 1 era, which is right here. And moving in this game is, let's say here, that's where the time prowler is. Moving is moving 1 space in the era adjacent, either in the future or in the past. So that's how movement works. Sometimes you can move in different parts of the board. Depends what the cards tell you to do. But movement is one. Let's say you want to make a movement, but you already use your free movement by flipping this over. You see the free movement? You already used it, but you would like to move again. If there's a cube on that space, you take that cube and you could move. And that's something that you could do. As long as there's a green cube, you're able to do that. The second thing you do is obviously you're able to use your cards. And you could do this in any order you want. And the last thing you're able to do is you're able to do what's called the loop. Every card on the top left corner has a logo. Okay? That means that this is the same type of whatever ability. There's different types. So there's different types of logos. Okay? However, if by chance you used all these cards up, so if you use these abilities, you exhaust them by turning them 90 degrees. To do a loop, what happens is, if you look at the board, if you take one of these green cubes, you do what's called the loop. And every card in your hand that you have exhausted and played and exhausted, if they have the same symbol, you get to go ahead and unexhaust all of them. Now let's say you had 3 cards exhausted, but each of them had different symbols. You can only unexhaust one of them. And then you go ahead and you could use those turns again until you run out. And let's say you want to do it again, well, you could unexhaust them again, but this time it would be worth 2 energy cubes to happen. And if you do it a third time, it would be worth 3 energy cubes, and then 4, and then so on and so forth. And that's how you try to mitigate all the craziness going on in the game of Loop. But it's a lot harder, at least in my opinion, because of the randomness, than it looks and sounds. After that, once you stop on a space, let's say this space would have had, let's say I would have stopped on this space, just for the sake of this example, okay? Any card that's in this era right here, you could take it and add it to your deck. Any card you choose, but you have to end your turn on that space in that era. You just add it, put it on the top of your deck, you get to play it on your next turn, and that's it. The next move that you do is a complete mission. So like, let's say I would have been here and there would have been a mission flipped over, and I would have completed all these missions, whatever the mission told me to do 4 times. Like, the only way you can complete the mission is once the mission is complete, you end your turn on a mission. If you complete a mission, but you do not end on the space and the era where the mission was completed, you do not get to complete that mission. So that's something you got to think about. It's kind of like a risk-reward type of thing that goes on there. Once that's done, if you complete a mission, you gain a card the way I showed you. You end up, every player chooses one from the artifact deck. You choose one to keep and one to destroy. From there, you go to what the game calls end of turn. And with the end of turn, if you ended up using that free movement and your battery's exhausted, you just flip over your agent. Any card that you use during your turn, you discard it. Oh. And you go ahead and you draw 3 more cards. And that's the end of your turn right there. After that, everybody makes sure that they draw 3 cards. And you have to look at the cycle over here. If Dr. Fo's mission deck over here or cycle is empty, the cycle's over. And remember, if the cycle's over and you have to reshuffle and there's no more space to go, like you're on this last space, the game's over as well. That's it. You just keep doing that over and over and over again until you either win or lose. So I made it to my final thoughts of the loop. I've played it both true solo and co-op multi-handed. I liked how they both played. They both played really well. So it's going to be up to your personal preference which way you're going to play it. Either one way or the other. The game loses absolutely nothing. It doesn't matter which way you play. The game plays exactly the same. A few things change on how the agents are chosen. Other than that, the game does not change. I love the art. I love the component quality. I loved how the game looks on the table. I had fun with the game. The randomness, however, it's strong in this one. These rift cubes are the bane of my existence. Very difficult. Oh, and out of the 5 games that I played, I lost every single one of them. And none of them, not one, not even one of those losses were close. I never felt like, oh, I was one move away or just a few moves away from victory and I just lost. No, this was like shoving my face on the ground, smearing my face on the mud and saying you lost. I mean, these were terrible losses. Among the worst losses I've ever had in my time playing board games. However, something about this game is really fun. And one of the biggest reasons that this game has a lot going for it, I think the randomness, that the difficulty comes that the way that you have to put the clones in the beginning to set up the game, and then you have to draw another clone before everyone's turn. Okay, in that very beginning part, I think they may have set it up that there's too many clones that are placed on the board, because at that point you're defenseless. You're defenseless. So if you end up drawing, let's say, two clones that end up going in your same era, and on you haven't even taken a turn yet, and you throw those cubes in here, you could lose that very first. It's insane. I don't like that. However, whenever you use the loop, what the game is actually called, and you end up using one of the energy cubes and readying all the cards that you exhausted on your turn and going ahead and at least the ones with the same symbols, and going ahead and using them again. There was a turn that I did that I for a second I thought, I'm just going to keep doing that and I'm going to beat the game just by doing that. If you get the right amount of cards and you're lucky with the draws that you receive, you could really do some incredible combos. You could make some amazing combos on the board, and some of these combos just keep going and going and going. They don't stop until you decide you've had enough or you run out of the energy cubes. And when that happens in this game, that's a rush that I've not felt in any board game. So on one hand, you have horrible randomness. On the other hand, you have this power that you could, if you have the right cards in front of you, cause so much destruction and damage, in a good way, on the board that you could basically save the day. And that is the genius of this game. It's that. So, does it outweigh the randomness? I don't know. I'm like somewhere in the middle. I lost 5 times in a row, and I want to go again. That does say something good about the game. I'm not going to sit here and give it the highest praises the way that I've heard. But I will be honest with you and say, even with all the randomness, even with the difficulty, this was a good game. It was fun. It was fun. Did it get me mad? Yes. Did it make me want to flip the table over? Kind of. But I had fun. And I think at the end of the day, when you play a board game, that's what you're looking for, is fun. I mean, this is a game that whether you play it solo or with other players, you're gonna be making noises out loud. You're gonna be woohooing and you're gonna be audibly many times throughout your game. And to me, that is the sign of a good game. Yes, randomness and all. There's lots of different modes to play, lots of different ways to play it, and it is beatable. It's beatable because I know it. I know it. Every game that I played, I became smarter in which cards I chose to add to my deck and which cards I decided to leave, even though I was allowed to grab them. Don't focus on filling your deck with as many cards as you can. Just like every deck builder, it's better to have fewer great cards than a lot of mediocre cards or subpar cards. And the same thing goes with this game. With that said, with all the negatives, everything that I mentioned, you probably think I wouldn't recommend this game, but the truth is I do recommend it. It's unique. It's a different type of game. Once you start getting used to how the game works and the best way for you to try to build your deck and how you could try to mitigate the craziness that is this board and that bane of my existence 3D machine right there, you start to see the genius of the game. And the truth is that it's a game that made me keep coming back saying, I'm going to do this. You don't want a game that you beat every time you sit down and play. You want a game that challenges you. Yes, the randomness is terrible. It is. But that loop mechanic, that's insane. That's a crazy mechanic that you can absolutely demolish and mitigate and destroy so many things on the board. It's like a balance. This randomness could destroy you. However, these energy cubes can destroy Dr. Foe. So it's like a two-way street. And because of that and the uniqueness and the art and the look and the feel and that gameplay loop that this game has, it's a fun gameplay loop. I absolutely recommend it. It wasn't that expensive. I think I got it for about $35. It has 4 different modes in it. It has true solo. It has co-op. It's a good game and definitely worth having in my collection. I want you to gauge the pros and the cons. Listen to everything that I said, and you decide whether or not this game is for you. It may be, it may not be. As for me, I'm glad that I have it. However, if you are not okay with that randomness, I suggest you avoid it. Thank you so much for spending some time with me. I really do appreciate it. I'm going to edit this video down because if not, it's going to be too long. Thank you so much for coming and joining me. And I really hope you guys all have a great game night. Take care.